born of trash.
What's happening, Goyfs? How's it going? This is Sammy the Bull here with you on another edition of Let's Build a cEDH deck. Last time, we took a pre-con, Dis of the Restless, of course, the Goyf mommy, and we turned it into my version of a cEDH deck using Goyfs. So, yeah. If you didn't like that, oh well, too bad. Guess what? Goyfs are here to stay. They've been around for long before you were probably playing Magic. Anyway, now that I've come to realize that I like building cEDH decks, I like playing go fast kind of format. It does really help you kind of, you know, be able to play a lot of games at once instead of like a huge long game that just kind of takes forever and kind of draws out to the point where people are like, well, guess what, folks, I gotta leave because I gotta go pick up the kids from school, or whatever the case may be. You gotta go do something in that 4 hours that you're playing that game. Too long in my opinion. Anyway, so what we're gonna do today is build another cEDH deck. What does cEDH stand for? Yes, that's right, competitive EDH. And let's take a look at what we're building today. Right behind me here, you can see this is Dimir, black and blue. That's what Dimir is. Dimir is actually a name that comes from one of the sets in Magic the Gathering called Ravnica. It's one of the guilds of Ravnica, the Dimir Guild. They're a little shadowy, little, you know, copycat-y, assassin-y kind of people. And today we're going to be talking about a deck that specifically does some things that are very Dimir-esque. Right? We're going to be doing a lot of copycat type of stuff. And we're going to be copying... Oh my gosh! My daughter's here to hang out with us a little bit. We're going to be copying this card right behind me right here. Hidetsugu and Kairi. And what does Hidetsugu and Kairi do? I'll tell you. Hidetsugu and Kairi is a 2 blue, 1 black, and 2 of any color. Legendary creature, Ogre Demon Dragon. Right? And it also flies, and it has a really crazy ability called Brainstorm when it enters the battlefield. Right? When Hidetsugu and Kairi enter the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Amazing. So we want a lot of enter the battlefield type of triggers, right? So when it enters the battlefield, we're going to get that trigger to happen, and it's going to be amazing. Because that's going to help us do the next thing, which is when Hidetsugu and Kairi dies, exile the top card of your library, target opponent loses life equal to the mana value of that card, and if it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. How crazy is that? So without paying its mana cost, so what does that mean? We want to put in the biggest instant and sorcery cards that we can possibly find, right? One of those I found we'll take a look at here real quick once we get into what is in this deck. As my daughter runs around behind me and figures out what she's going to do, like a little bird in a nest trying to figure out a way to fit in, we're going to go on to the next slide here in our little show. So what are we talking about with this deck? A lot of what we're talking about is trying to make sure that we clone Hidetsugu and Kairi, right? And we want to clone Hidetsugu and Kairi with as many creatures that can do clone stuff as possible. A lot of people already that play cEDH know clones for, you know, throughout cEDH history, right? A lot of that is Phantasmal Image because it's one of the cheaper clones. Phantasmal Image, as you can see there, is a creature illusion 0/0 that is only a blue and 1 of any color. And when it enters the battlefield, it can copy any creature on the battlefield, right? This is a throwback to the old Vesuvian Doppelganger. you can kind of see in my creature pile here, I did kind of do a throwback. I wanted to put in a Vesuvian Doppelganger because I thought Vesuvian Doppelganger, I mean, what a classic card to play. Beautiful artwork, just an amazing card in general. So I decided to go ahead and throw it in there as just another clone. Yeah, it's 5 mana, but so's ad nauseum, so who cares? We can create 5 mana in, like, you know, turn 1. So if we really wanted to, we could get that out. But more to the point, we're going to get out Hidetsugu and Kairi as quickly as possible so that we can do what? That's right. Clone it. Right, so we want to pick the best ones. Of course, Phantasmal Image, as I said, being one of the best. And we got in the Doctor Who set, the Flesh Duplicate, which has come along at 2 mana also, giving us another clone. We don't even care about the vanishing part of Flesh Duplicate. All we care about is the 2 mana and very easy to cast and clone Hidetsugu and Kairi with. Right, so Evil Twin, another good one to have in this deck as well, and a couple of other clone creatures that cost 3. You know, as you go along, there's not as many clones in all of Magic that, you know, are really effective that cost 2 or less. And really the only 2 that I know of is Flesh Duplicate and Phantasmal Image. Yes, there's the one that's the vehicle, but that's only to clone your opponent's creatures, which is not what we're trying to do at all here. Right? We're trying to clone our own creatures, and the only way to do that is to get these types of clones. So we have Glasspool Mimic, which is a modal dual-face card. And what that means is, on one side, it's a creature. So this creature in particular is key to our deck. It's 1 mana and 2 of any color. 1 blue mana and 2 of any color. It's a 0/0, and it comes into the battlefield and makes a copy of a creature. So it doesn't target anything whenever you have these kind of clone creatures. The great thing about those is that they don't have a target type of effect, right? Which can be countered in some instances. Clone is a very unique thing in Magic where it allows you to copy another creature that's on the battlefield. So with Hidetsugu and Kairi, we're trying to copy that, right? It is a legendary creature, so what's going to happen? What that means, basically, is that Hidetsugu and Kairi, or the clone that has now come and cloned it, one of those 2 has to go and has to perish. It has to be unalived because of the legendary rule, right? So because of the legendary rule, when that clone comes into play, that clone will then have to go to the graveyard. Right? Because it has come in, it's copied a legendary creature, but we get the ETB effect, right? So what ETB means is enter the battlefield, right? Or as the Wizards has now shortened it to, enters. So when the clone enters, it will now clone that legendary creature, our commander, right behind me here, Hidetsugu and Kairi. We'll get the Brainstorm effect. Once we get that Brainstorm effect, we'll get to draw those 3 cards. We'll look at our hand, and in our hand, as you can see down there, we have a couple of sorceries that I'm going to go over. We're going to get some kind of card that we can maybe take to maximum effect in this deck and have this effect happen, right? So our whole point is to get one of these clones down. That clone will come in, it'll make a copy, we'll draw the 3 cards off the top of our deck, we'll look at our whole entire hand and put the best 2 back on top of the deck. Once we put those best 2 back on top of the deck, the best 2 that we're trying to find, right, is one of these sorceries that you can see here, right? Either Enter the Infinite, Rise of the Eldrazi, which is another 12 mana spell. It's 12 mana spell. Anyway, and the other one, which gets us about halfway there, which is actually better, in my opinion, than Rise of the Eldrazi, because Rise of the Eldrazi really only draws you 4 cards. It does give you an extra turn to try to, like, get the, you know, the win con to happen. But Peer into the Abyss is the other one that we're really trying to get to go off, right? Because that'll most likely draw you into a win con. That's going to draw you half of your deck when you cast that card. You do lose half your life, but you really don't care about that. Life is just a resource in cEDH anyway, because you have 40 life. Why not spend it? Why not lose half of it and win the game anyway? Right? So Peer into the Abyss, a sorcery that you will get to cast for free without paying its mana cost, once the clone of Hidetsugu and Kairi perishes, right? So once it goes away, goes in the graveyard, that trigger, now it has a die effect, right? And it triggers, you get to go and cast that card that you've put on the top. Now, not in all cases will you be able to get the exact card that you want, maybe, but you'll be able to get there as quickly as you can with the way we've built the deck, right? We've also got, so with the creatures, these sorceries here, we've also got Demonic Tutor as usual. It's going to go search our library for a card, put that card into our hand. We've got our Imperial Seal. That's going to put a card on top, which could also just be good anyway. Do an Imperial Seal, have a clone effect, draw the 3, you know, so you do the Imperial Seal, you're putting the card that you want on the top anyway, right? Which is most likely going to be Enter the Infinite. You cast the Enter the Infinite for free, basically, with Hidetsugu and Kairi. And then once that happens, draw the whole deck and put one card from your hand back on top of the library. What I usually do there is I'll either put like a land or I'll put something like that back on top of the library. Now, could people have out stuff like Cephalid Coliseum, things like that? Sure. Those are all things that you're going to have to kind of deal with or kind of figure out a way to work around. What we really want is to be able to get those two things to happen and then put the best card on top of our deck. So the whole point is to do that, right? And that's really like all the deck revolves around, is doing that. And then getting out another creature that you can see up there, which is Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle, being one of the best win cons in cEDH, is going to come onto the battlefield. When you have all those cards in your hand, you have a way to protect it. And so let's get into what are those things, because I've been talking about a whole lot. Let's actually look at what those are. The bulk of the deck is instant spells. Why is it instant spells? Because guess what, people, we're playing blue. And in blue, in cEDH, we want to have as many free interaction spells as we can possibly have. Because, you know, we're just here to win the game, right? And the way we're going to do that is just protect that win. So all of these instants that are here are just to protect your win. And we'll kind of go through those. Most of them are pretty straightforward, right? So obviously, an offer you can't refuse is a non-creature counterspell for 1 mana. We have Stifle, another counter, but it's countered activated ability or triggered ability. Born Upon a Wind lets us go at lightning speed. We're gonna go at instant speed. We also get to draw a card, so we can try to like eke out a win on top of somebody else's turn if we can, which would be really great and is totally doable in this deck. Like there is no way that you do not completely play like a blue player, and blue players know what I'm talking about. You wait for that right moment where you're like, okay, all like shields are down at this point. On somebody's end step, I'm gonna do this Born Upon a Wind, cast everything at flash speed, and then win the game. So another card that's a must-have in this deck is Brainstorm. Brainstorm basically does the first effect of Hidetsugu and Kairi, which is to draw the 3 cards, and then those go into your hand, and then put 2 out of your whole hand back on top of the deck, right? We got a little bit of mana production in here, right, with Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, and then there's also a couple of instant speed. Make a copy of a token creature on the battlefield, or make a token copy of a creature on the battlefield, right? Which is mostly going to be Hidetsugu and Kairi. And one of those cards is Cackling Counterpart, that came from the original Innistrad. And then we have another one that just came out in Thunder Junction called 3 Steps Ahead. It does cost one more colorless mana, but it is 1 less blue mana. So again, just as I was talking about with like the Phyrexian Metamorph and the Stunt Double, the difference in having to pay like 2 blue mana versus 1 blue mana and 3 other any color mana is huge, really, because sometimes you just don't have that 1 extra colored mana to do what you need to do. So it is a little more difficult to cast, in my opinion, the Cackling Counterpart versus 3 Steps Ahead. But they kind of do the same thing. And in this deck, of course, there's many dual lands. We have lots of, as you can see below, mana rocks that we'll go over. So there's ways to get the blue mana if you need it. You know, no problem. I'm not really worried about that too much. But anyway, at instant speed, I can make a copy of Hidetsugu and Kairi and do the thing again if I really needed to, right? Make a copy of him. When he comes in, it gets the ETB, right? Or the enters trigger. And then I get that enters trigger. In that enters trigger, so this is a very precision-based deck, right? So you kind of want to do things when it's harder for everybody else to kind of respond, which is either going to be in in-steps or at instant speed in most cases, like pretty much 99% of the time. You want to be trying to do this stuff at instant speed and win the game outright right there. So with things like Born Upon the Wind and Cackling Counterpart, 3 Steps Ahead, you want to do those like when at the most opportune times, right? So a blue player's mindset is like waiting for that opportunity to be like, boom, go fast, and then protect my win. So as I said, protecting our win is most of what is going on here. All of these instants, Chain of Vapor, that will bounce a target permanent. They do get to copy that spell, so it could target your Hidetsugu, but you could also just respond to the Chain of Vapor and then do another like Cackling Counterpart or 3 Steps Ahead, or even counterspell their Chain of Vapor that they've copied, right? Because they cast that copy. So we have another card called Commandeer that also steals a spell off the stack. It could be any spell. It could be a creature spell. It could be anything. But what you have to do is get rid of 2 blue cards out of your hand. You have to exile 2 blue cards. We have plenty of blue cards in this deck, so I wasn't worried about putting that card in here, and it's also just a great got you kind of card, especially in the beginning of the game when I have no mana, but I have a bunch of blue cards in my hand that, like, if I had a Pact Negation in my hand on turn 1, and then something else that is going to cost me a little bit of mana to do, and I'm not going to be able to do it on turn 1, I can throw those cards away. Something like, you know, I don't know, we'll say a Pact Negation and like a Mana Drain. Turn 1 or turn 0, I'm not casting those cards. So I can toss those for a Commandeer and get whatever spell that is turn 0. Which is usually good sometimes. Sometimes people are casting Ristic Study on turn 1. Sometimes people are casting good Mana Rocks on turn 1. And you just want to steal that and take advantage of the game at that point, right? That shuts them down to a degree. But you want to be selective, right? So don't just go for their first little Soul Ring. Maybe there's something that's better that's going to come along the line. Soul Ring wouldn't be my first target. I would be looking at something like a Ristic Study. I'd be looking at something like an Esper Sentinel. I'd be looking at things that are going to give them some sort of advantage. Mana advantage is one thing, but like really not your first. Maybe if you were like going 4th and like the only thing that came out, really the best thing to get was a Soul Ring from the 3rd player or the 2nd player or whatever. But you gotta really like look at that situation and kind of judge what is the best time to go in there and do this. For me, I would wait till I got something that was good to commandeer, right? Anyway, so that's another in this whole slew of bag of tricks here. So counterspell, Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is really kind of a bounce here. Usually we're not going to be doing the 7 mana thing at all. Like, if this deck, I don't know if there's any way this deck can, like, go past turn 4 or 5 and actually be winning. It's not like a long-term deck, right? This is like a go fast, I need to win by, like, turn 4 kind of deck. It's not really going to be... I don't know. Cyclonic Rift is just one of those cards that's in there for, like, I got you. I'm going to put your Orcish Bowmaster back in your hand so that I can draw my entire deck and not die. That's essentially what that is in there for. Same thing with Chain of Vapor. So we talked about that. Deadly Rollick, same thing. We want to have a Deadly Rollick that's going to take out Orcish Bowmaster. It's going to do anything that's going to kind of wreck our day and not let us draw is what we want to get rid of, right? So Deadly Rollick will exile a creature. The Chain of Vapor, the Cyclonic Rift, those are bouncing things. Same thing with the 2 flares. The Flare of Denial obviously being a counterspell if you sacrifice a blue creature. And if you sacrifice a black creature, Flare of Malice, that gets rid of other creatures on your opponent's battlefields, right? I think of the highest mana cost. So Flusterstorm, another counterspell for instants and sorceries. Foil, another one of these kind of commandeer cards where you can pitch a blue card and I think a land or something like that, and then you can pitch cards to cast a free counterspell. Same thing with Force of Negation, blue card if it's not your turn, Force of Will, all those great free counterspells. Mental Misstep costing either 1 blue or a Phyrexian. It's going to hit a 1-drop. That could be an offers you can't refuse, or something against you that is trying to stop you, right? Like a Swan Song or whatever. You can, cast that for free. So that's really what we're kind of looking at. And then a Mind Break Trap, because this deck, I guarantee you, there's going to be a lot of spells hitting the stack pretty quickly. Having your own Mind Break Trap for their Mind Break Trap, right? Because they're gonna, if they're a blue player, they're not always, but likely playing something like Mind Break Trap. and they're going to try and get you as well. So also a great thing to have. Mystical Tutor is going to put that thing on top that you need. That's going to get you your sorcery, really. So Mystical Tutor really is... I wouldn't say it's for the interaction. Really, what Mystical Tutor is for Enter the Infinite. You want to get Mystical Tutor to put that Enter the Infinite, along with these other tutors, like the Vampiric Tutor and the Imperial Seal and all that. You want to put that Enter the Infinite on top of your library so that you can have that be one of the cards you draw and, you know, shoot your opponent with the second part of... You draw with the clone, and then you put it back on top, and then you shoot your opponent with the second part of Hidetsugu and Kairi, and then be able to cast that, and then draw, and then win, right? So that's another part there that helps you do that win con with the Mystical Tutor. Saw in half is also another way to get a clone. So we can saw in half Hidetsugu and Kairi. The 2 will come in, right? The original will die, the 2 will come in. You'll get both the triggers happening at the same time, which is great. So that we get to do this twice. I get to draw 3. I'll put 2 back. I get to draw another 3. I get to see at least one more card with that. And that could be the game-winning thing that I need right there, right? So that could be like the Mystical Tutor, and I got maybe a Brainstorm in my hand. I can cast that Mystical Tutor for free with the, you know, one of the 2 copies of Hidetsugu and Kairi dying from Saw in Half. So when it dies, and then I get that Mystical Tutor, cast that Mystical Tutor for free, and then I have right on top of that another Brainstorm or another clone or something like that to keep the process going and make sure that I'm going to be in a position to have my win con happen, right? So really, I want to get that Enter the Infinite on top of the battle, on top of the library, so that I can draw it or have it in my hand. Like, just having it in your hand is great too. If I have that in my hand on turn 1, we're golden. Then my only job is to get Hidetsugu and Kairi onto the battlefield and clone it. And once I can do that, that's pretty much game over. If I can do that by like turn 2 or 3, golden, right? And it's very possible with this deck. Not always possible. I've found in a lot of play testing that I did with this deck, turn 2 was like not very often. And then I kind of mathed it out with what we do have here. You could maybe in Magical Christmas Land do that on turn 1, but it's almost impossible. So it would be like, yeah, it would be like almost statistically impossible to do that on turn 1. So you're looking at turn 2 or 3 with this deck, which is not bad, right? And that's very cEDH in my mind. And as I said, all of these counter spells and bounce spells and kill spells, they are all just to protect your win. They're not really about, like, I mean, if somebody else is going to win, yes, maybe use your counterspell to keep them from winning, but they're really to protect you. So that's a mindset you have to have when you're playing this deck. You have to be like, okay, they cast a Soul Ring. Do I really care about that? No, I don't really care about that because that's not like making them win right now. I'm going to wait and see what else they cast. And if they cast something then that you're like a game I just saw recently with a certain bear, Lumra, I think it is, that allows you to play all these lands and win, right, with lands. If they're casting something like an Amulet of Vigor, or they're casting something like that little artifact creature that allows lands to come in and play untapped, or whatever the case may be, if you can see that there's a combo piece that came down and there's possibility of a loop about to happen, yeah, you want to put in your interaction and probably stop that from occurring, because likely with this deck, as we get to draw the 3 cards with the Enter the Battlefield effect from Hidetsugu and Kairi, we're maybe going to draw back into some interaction that we have. And of course, we have 32 instants, so very likely we're going to draw into some sort of interaction that can help us, you know, stabilize and win. When we had to go and help out the table and not allow one player or the other to, you know, eke out the win with their win con. So, but as I said, mainly all of these counter spells are here to help you win. So you have to keep that in mind. These are here for protecting me, not caring about anything else that anybody else does on the table unless they're trying to win immediately. All right, so keep that in mind. And of course you have some of the classics in here. Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pact. Those are going to go along with Thassa's Oracle. If you get that on turn 1 and you can sneak that in there, then go ahead and be my guest and sneak it on in there and do that win, right? That's very much a possibility. Again, other things that do some bouncing and stuff like that, returning target spell or an online permanent, Singing a Stupor, it's also an MDFC or a modal dual face card, right? It has that on the front and then it flips over if you need it to and becomes a land. Great way to have like extra lands in your deck without actually putting in a land to take up a slot for a spell that could help you, right? And we had to go do a wardrobe change. Why? Because guess what, folks? It's day 2 of filming this cEDH build. I know it sounds like we should have been able to get through all of it in one day, but we didn't. We had other things to do because I am, number 1, a dad, and number 2, a YouTuber. So we had to go do what we got to do, right? Dad YouTubers? Like, you know, come on, get together with me here. Anyway, made a little wardrobe change, coming back to kind of where we left off, right? And where we left off was right there at the end of our instance. Right, we were talking about Singing a Stupor. It's a modal dual face card, like I said, and Swan Song, which is another counter spell, counters an enchantment, instant or sorcery, gives them a little birdie. Do we really care about the little birdie? Not so much, because we're not really doing a lot of combat in this whole deck here, folks. Do not expect to do any combat, in fact, actually. I mean, if you want to attack with Hidetsugu and Kairi, be my guest. But guess what? You might want to be cloning them prior to them dying in combat. Not that they won't die, you know, normally, because actually they're pretty strong. So, and again, if you look there in our, the rest of our little, we talked about 3 steps ahead, we talked about Vampiric Tutor, all that stuff. Most of you who are cEDH players know what these cards do, and you know how powerful they are. But, you know, there you go. That's the bulk of the deck, right? Those 32 instants. And that, like I said, those are going to be the ones that you're going to use to make sure you're protecting your own win con. Do not allow yourself to be sucked into counterspelling somebody's Soul Ring. Nobody cares about that. Alright, all we care about is, are they about to cast the winning spell right now? And if they are, guess what we're going to be doing? We're going to be counterspelling that. And if they don't, then we don't care. We're just going to protect our own win. Alright, moving on down to the old artifacts here. And of course, none of these artifacts look unfamiliar to anybody who plays cEDH. If you're not familiar, we'll go over a couple of them here. Obviously, we have Arcane Signet. Most people that play Commander should know that card by now. Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Crom sits upon this mountain. Anyway, my impression of Arnold. But that's not Crom Mox, that's Chrome Mox. Anyway, Felwar Stone, Sensei's Divining Top. So, another thing we're going to go over here in a little bit is our enchantments. And one of those enchantments is called Counterbalance. And for anybody who knows, it's kind of a soft lock to have a Sensei's Divining Top and a Crom Mox. A Sensei's Divining Top and a Crom... No. A Sensei's Divining Top and a Counterbalance. So, also Grim Monolith, Soul Ring, Talisman of Dominance is fine in here too. We just want to have as many mana rocks as we can possibly have so that when we do draw all of those cards into our hand, we have plenty of options for getting enough mana out to be able to cast the rest of our spells, protect our win con at all costs, right? So we want to get our Thassa's Oracle down. Once we draw all these cards in, right, what we're counting on is that maybe we've had like 1 or 2 of the 0-drop artifacts come down, and that's fine. But we don't want to have like, you know, maybe 1 mana is available to have mana for a Mana Vault or mana for a Grim Monolith. And then we get that extra boost of mana once you can use that artifact for the 3 colorless. And then cast one of our other artifacts that'll go ahead and lead us into more mana. And be able to just have us, you know, have enough mana to protect ourselves. So at that point, you've got everything in your hand. You got all these mana rocks down. Another way to copy, so like let's say you ran out of copy spells, which in this deck is likely impossible. But let's say you ran out of everything. We still have another artifact, which is very interesting, right there above the One Ring. And that is Machine God's Effigy. So Machine God's Effigy, quite good actually. It actually comes into play, and I read this and I had to reread it and make sure it comes into play as an artifact. It's not a creature, but it has the abilities of that whatever creature it copied, right? So I was I was like, wow, this is... So it can also, like, immediately tap for the blue mana, because it's an artifact that just says tap for 1 blue, but also comes in a copy of a creature. So we're coming in, we're copying Hidetsugu and Kairi. Then we get the whole effect, which we talked about earlier. And I can still tap it for the blue as it has the die trigger. So I get an extra, like, blue mana out of it also. I was like, this is perfect. Who could have made a better mana rock than this for this deck? Yes, it's 4 mana, but, I mean, you get a lot for 4 mana. You get an extra blue mana, and you basically get a copy of whatever creature. And again, you may be tempted. There may be lots of creatures out there that you really want to copy. I am sure there are, and in fact, I've seen most of them. And let me tell you that you don't want to focus on that. Again, this is another mindset of this deck. The only way this deck works is if you really focus on what the deck does, right? Which is getting down your commander, copying your commander, doing all the effects of your commander, and winning the game that way, right? If you focus on that, like hyper-focus, you're going to be good. All right, so all our mana rocks there to make sure we can do all that stuff. We'll talk about Sensei's Divining Top a little bit, right? That's going to make you be able to manipulate the top 3 cards of your library. So again, it's just another effect to kind of look at the top of your library and make sure that, you know, if that big sorcery spell that you need is in there, you could actually manipulate the top of your library, put it on top, and then tap Sensei's Divining Top to go ahead and draw that card. So then there's the One Ring, of course. The One Ring is like, you know, in this deck, it's kind of like the backup to the backup plan. You know, we're not really trying to do One Ring things at all, like multiple taps or anything like that. It's just there because it is a really good draw artifact. It's the best draw artifact. And it just has to be in there because it can kind of be like a... well, I'm not getting what I need just yet, so I need to survive this turn, so it'll come down and give me that protection to survive. So it could be looked at that way as kind of like a, let me get one more turn, almost. Of course, somebody else could win in that turn. Who knows? Whatever. But it could, you know, help save you for a turn and then let you get back into the game by having that draw effect. Right? And everybody kind of knows what the One Ring is. So moving on, we'll talk about some enchantments and lands, and then we'll kind of go over the deck spread here. All right, so obviously Copy Artifact is really great for this deck, especially if we're doing Machine God's Effigy or something like that. Let's say we lose our commander, Machine God's Effigy is still out, and then we can Copy Artifact our own Machine God Effigy, and then that'll make a copy of our commander and do the whole thing over again and make us, you know, have the die effect, have the draw effect as it enters, all that stuff, right? So good stuff all around. And then obviously you know, there's only one way to go in blue, and that's drawing cards. And the way to do that is with these awesome enchantments called Mystic Remora and Heuristic Study. Some people talk about banning Heuristic Study. I mean, ridiculous. Don't ban anything. Banning's stupid. Just leave it alone. Let us have fun and play at the highest speed possible. Because banning cards like this just makes, like, you know, I don't know. It just makes the game, like, go longer. I don't know why it is, but I guess something about we played a regular casual game, right? Me and a couple of the retired chiefs in my playgroup, and that thing went for 4 hours. Like I was talking about at the beginning of this, playing cEDH allows you to play, like, you know, go through a couple of games and kind of like do what your deck wants to do within like a few 4, 5, or 6 turns or something like that. And you know, sometimes you don't get to do what your deck wants to do, but in the next game, probably after we played for only about 20 minutes and we play another game, you'll be able to do that, right? Now, we're not trying to go like Yu-Gi-Oh! Turn 1 type of stuff here, but we're definitely wanting to get in, you know, multiple games and kind of see a variety of cards, a variety of play styles, having to play through a variety of hands, learning how to mulligan, things like that. Those are all good things that cEDH teaches you, right? How to mulligan well. And mulliganing well is also really good for multiple other formats, especially like Modern, knowing how to look at your hand and be like, you know what, actually, I might get a better 6, or I might get a better 5 cards that I can look at. Because you're always going to draw 7 at the beginning of that, and then look, and then say, hey, what are the best 5 here, right? Just like a poker hand, or what are the best 4? Whatever the case may be, you're looking for the best of those 7 cards, and then you're going to keep those. So you might get something better, right? Don't take the first hand as like the end-all be-all of what you draw. In my experience, actually, like I'd say mulliganing is almost like 70-30, I would say. Only about 30%, maybe even less. 30% of the time you're going to get a hand you may keep on the first 7. But that other 70% of the time, it behooves you to put those cards on the bottom of your library and draw another 7, shuffle up and then draw another 7 cards. And then look at those 7 for a possible another good 7. Because in Commander, as the rules go, you get 2 7-card draws. One of them's free, right? So you might as well mulligan for free. It's like in golf. If I could just mulligan for free in golf, that'd be great. I'd have excellent scores. I wouldn't be in the 100 plus. I digress. We're not talking about golf, right? We're talking about these enchantments here. Obviously, there's a pretty good enchantments for it. There could be some other stuff there, but what I really wanted to leave room for was the good instance that we wanted to keep in this deck to protect us. So, and then also I went ahead and said, hey, you know what? Why not have an enchantment that also tries to protect us, which is Counterbalance. And as I said before, with Sensei's Divining Top, Counterbalance is kind of a soft lock. I've had it done to me many times by a certain player named Russ, who is a Dirty Atraxa player, and he used to play Counterbalance with Sensei's Divining Top quite a bit. I think he took it out because it was just like too many cards in there, and he's like, you know, I could just have a counterspell in here instead. But with this deck, I already have 32 counter effects or interaction effects. So I was like, well, why not have one more and throw in an old counterbalance? Hopefully I can put this deck together. I have some cards coming from it, from the sources that we all get cards from, and put that together and play Russell with this deck and see how that goes. Coming for you, bro.
Coming for you. That's right. We're gonna take this cEDH game to the maximum.
Alright, I was doing a little WWF there. Don't worry about it. Anyway, we're going to counterbalance the crap out of Russ and draw a lot of cards with our Mystic Remore and Rhystic Study. Again, you're not really looking for those cards. They're great to have on like turn 1, and if you can get it out on turn 1, sure. But this deck here is really not like looking for those specific cards. So mulliganing in this deck, as we were talking about, is kind of key to getting the Enter the Infinite, the big sorceries. Because if you get those big sorceries and you get some mana to go ahead and get your commander out and then clone your commander, you can put that big sorcery back on the top, have the die effect. So really, that's what you're kind of like looking for in this deck, right? In your 7 that you're going to get. Your first 7, your second 7, your 6, your 5, whatever it is you're going to draw and mulligan and put cards back on the bottom for. That's what you're really looking for. Is it great to have a Mystic Remore turn 1? Sure, yes. But I wouldn't go for that right off the bat. Like, even it would have to be like a really good, like, other parts of this are working as well kind of hand with this deck to also keep the heuristic study that I could maybe cast on turn 2, right? Because really what I wanted to be doing on turn 1 and 2 is setting up the get my commander in, clone it, and rip Enter the Infinite off the top. That's really what I'm looking for, right? But of course, these draw enchantments are just like necessary, right? If you're playing blue, you have to have these in there. If you don't have them in there, you're kind of like keeping yourself at a disadvantage a little bit. So even though in this deck they're not like the main focus, they are like really good. And especially in a pinch, let's just say you've mulliganed like 3-4 times. Now you're down to like 3 cards and you get a Rhystic Study with a land and a Soul Ring or something. Sure, keep that hand. Does that happen all the time? No. Usually it's like land, some spell you can't cast, and like some other third card that's completely meaningless, and you're just like, well, I'm at 3 cards already, so I'm just gonna keep it. You know? So that happens a lot too. Sometimes you get lucky to doing the mulligans, sometimes you don't. Don't worry about it. You know, you're not gonna win every game. Nobody can. Nobody does. Except for a few people I know. I don't know how they do it, but they do seem to consistently win almost every game. And you know who you're talking about. anybody out there who has some nemesis in Magic that they play with in their friends group, they know that that's the person that always wins, it seems like, and they have brutal decks that you just can't get around for some reason. But they pilot them well, so you gotta respect them. Alright, so let's talk about our lands. We only have 27 lands, but we have the 2 modal dual face cards. So if we are like, wow, I totally need a land right here, and I really don't need a Synchron Super, I can go ahead and Lightning Bolt, I was going to say Shock, but Lightning Bolt myself, which means deal 3 damage to myself, and then flip that card over and put it in as an untapped land. So important, untapped. I'm taking damage, so that's the downside here, but really, again, in a 40 lifespan commander game, taking that little 3 damage for putting out a land that's going to be coming into play untapped, yeah, I'd rather do that. So, of course, we're going to have Ancient Tomb because we lost our good old Mana Crypt. Little moment of silence there for Mana Crypt. Anyway, so Ancient Tomb and all of the, I think I put in like 5. I'm counting them. Yep, we got 5 fetch lands. We only have like 1 island and 1 swamp, I believe. Yeah. You never know. You might need an island or a swamp for some reason or another. Might need a basic. And especially in a deck like this with only 2 colors, it's okay to have a couple of basics, or even, you know, you could even have 2 of each. But for me, really, I want to look at lands that are going to do something good for me. Right, so one of those lands, of course, is Cephalid Coliseum, as I talked about earlier. It just says target player draws 3 cards, right? So it's at instant speed. I think it's a threshold effect, so if I had enough cards in my graveyard, I can do that. But still, you know, it's just one of those things. And also, in this deck, I'm certain, absolutely certain, that Hidetsugu and Kairi are going to be, like, target number 1 when you get them down. Because everybody's going to know, especially those cEDH players that are either watching this video or know about the commander itself, when that guy comes in, you're going to expect some sort of clone effect almost like immediately. It's kind of like a kill on sight because you could have the combo like that turn that you bring in your commander. So turn 2, if you're bringing in Hidetsugu and Kairi, like almost immediately, your commander's gonna be targeted. So Command Beacon is like kind of a must because, and 2, you want to get around things like Drannith Magistrate, right? But your commander's gonna get targeted. It's gonna die. It may die once or twice, but that's what all those friggin' counter spells are for. So come at me, bro. Try to take out my Hidetsugu and Kairi. I will counterspell thine hindside. Anyway. But Command Beacon's there if Hidetsugu and Kairi, you know, gets shut down too many times. Try to bring them back with Command Beacon, cast them from your hand instead, so that you're not paying that huge commander cost. And by the time that happens, though, this deck, you know, it doesn't have a lot of other win cons, right? So really, like, that's what you need to be focusing on, is getting that guy out. Yeah, basically, don't count on anything else in this deck as trying to, like, win you the game, right? The only other thing is, like, if that doesn't work, you can maybe, like, search for your Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation combo on its own, but, yeah, try to protect your commander. That's all I'm gonna say. So, obviously, a lot of these other ones are very obvious. Emergence Zone, just another way to go at instant speed. You saw Valley Flood Caller that we had, similar thing. Also, Born Upon a Wind. I put all of those in here just to have different ways to be like, you know what, I'm going to interact on your turn and then win. So, Minamo, that's just a way to tap and untap your One Ring multiple times. Doesn't really do anything else in the deck, but it is there for the One Ring. But it also just comes in play untapped and it's a blue mana. So why not have something that also does stuff? Ottawa Soaring City, another channel bounce effect on that land, so that's a must-have. And another way to get your commander to pass away into eternity. And if you have just like, so here's a scenario, right? You don't always have to clone your commander to win the game. So it's not absolutely necessary that you clone your commander in this to win the game. Phyrexian Tower is one of the ways that you can take advantage of your commander's die effect. So it does die, it goes to the graveyard, and then it passes from that zone into the command zone. That's how the die effects work for every card in Magic. Almost, unless there's some effect on the board that is exiling things instead. Stupid Anafinza and Dothy Voidwalker, cards like that. You know who you are, Anafinza players. Anyway, I digress from my Anafinza rant. Phyrexian Tower is another way to go ahead and get your commander to have that die effect, right? As soon as, you know, like, let's say your clone gets destroyed or counterspelled or whatever, it's not working, you can always take that Phyrexian Tower and go ahead and sacrifice your original Hidetsugu and Kairi to that, and then get the die effect that you need to rip that card off the top, the Enter the Infinite, or whatever it is you're going for off the top, right? So once you do that, you're in business, and you've cast the spell that you need to for 0 mana. So there you go. That's most of the lands there. You can see there's the Undercity Sewers that has like a surveil effect. Also helps out, you know, with things like the Threshold for Cephalid Coliseum. You don't really need it for anything else, but, you know, it's there, just in case. And again, you know, like I said, cEDH is going to cost you a little bit. Some of these lands are a little bit more expensive. Urza Saga, Underground Sea being one of the original dual lands. Obviously, that costs quite a bit. So, yeah, you know, unless you're proxying this whole deck, you're really going to have to spend a little bit of money, right? And that's okay. It's okay to spend a little bit of cash to make a cool cEDH deck, especially if you want to take it into a tournament and really do well, right? Because all the other people that are going to be in that tournament, unless they offer to allow proxies, you're going to need to pay that money. So, and as I said in the last episode with Dissa, you know, like if you're just playing with your friends and you're just wanting to play fast games with your friends doing cEDH, proxy the whole thing, man. $100 gets you a cool deck. There you go. That's pretty much the whole deck right there. And we're going to kind of go over, since I did put this deck up in Moxfield, we'll put the links down in the description below for Moxfield, and you'll see that. I wanted to kind of go over some of the layout of this deck, right, a little bit. And you'll see that when you do go onto Moxfield, right? So one of the main things to pay attention to in Moxfield is the average mana value of your deck. You want to get that like as low as possible. Now this deck has a couple of outliers that are 12 mana, and because they're 12 mana apiece, if I were to take out those like 12 mana and 7 mana spells, this deck would have a relatively low average mana value for the deck, right, with lands. Get that as low as possible. For a cEDH deck, I would highly recommend if you can get that down below 2 mana, you're going to be sitting in the sweet spot. Now, like I said, this deck has a couple of outliers with those 12 mana spells, but those 12 mana spells are in there to be cast for free. So really, like, without those 12 mana spells, that'd be minus 24 off of that. So you're looking at, you know, a real actual cost of whatever 87 minus 24 is. I don't really do math very well. Let's see, 80 minus 20 is 60. And then minus another, yep, all right, we're doing a lot of math. Math things are happening. It'll be lower. How about that? The fact that it's going to be, like, even lower because you are casting those for free, that's going to be to your advantage, right? Being able to cast things quickly, expediently, and efficiently in the cEDH is like the key to winning, right? The faster you can go, the better your deck is usually going to be, right? And if you can go fast and be effective, that's really where your, you know, sweet spot is for cEDH. Again, go on a Moxfield, check out the deck. You can kind of see the percentages here and all that kind of stuff. You can do a little play testing on there. Moxfield, not really a sponsor of this show, but a really cool site to go on to and check out. So you'll see those links down in the description below. That is all we got for the Hidetsugu and Kairi cEDH Dimir deck. And remember to make sure you're protecting that win. All right, so hit us up for a like and subscribe. Appreciate all you being here today, and that's all we got for the Bad Goyfs edition of Build a cEDH Deck Part 2. Cut all that part out. That's all trash. Should we keep that part in? No, it was terrible. All right, kids. Have fun doing your cEDH decks. Sammy the Bull is out. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to support us directly, go to patreon.com/badgoyfs. Also, follow us on all social media, links in the description below. And remember, you're all my Goyfs, and I love you. Bye-bye.